10 ways to stay in real estate investing. Energize, solve, and prosper. That's what we're all here for, right? All right, I'm really excited now because you're all going to be winners. That's what we're here for, other than fighting the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We're out of that. Now, everybody's always looking for financial freedom, right? That's what we're going for. We know there's not enough hours in the day to just be out there working it. So how about making more money while solving the housing problem at the same time? I think so. I have 3 assisted livings, and I have to deal with nurses and all that. So that's right, solving the housing problem while creating your own financial security. That's what we're here for. So let me introduce to you Sherry Candelario from Shared Housing Academy, all the way from the communist state of Seattle. Come on up.
Hopefully, this is supposed to stick to my ear. Let's try this again. Okay.
There we go.
I got it. So I do come from the communist state of Seattle, but I have a disclaimer. I was born in Michigan. My mom's from Dayton. We moved to Florida. I went to grad school in Seattle and stayed there, and it did become communist. So we moved back to Florida 3 months ago. We said we want to be somewhere where real estate investors. We want to be somewhere where the government doesn't have your hand in your pocket. And you're going to have to forgive me for a minute. Yeah, we're working on that. I'll probably be on this side. Okay. So I want to tell you a story about, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take your hand mic. Let's just do that. Is that all right? This is not going to work. Excuse me for a minute.
Magic tricks.
I know. This is there you go. I'll just mute this. So sorry. Okay, let's try this. I want to tell you a story about life and the life we had and the life we believed in. You know, I believed in the myth of W-2 employment. And like Anna was stating, I came to the belief that I would rather work 80 hours a week than have a 40-hour-a-week job. And on top of that, we also experienced housing insecurity, and I'm going to tell you that story, and how my husband Frank, who can't be here tonight because we happen to be parents of our grandchildren who are ages 3 and 5, is tucked in Tampa today with these little ones. But we decided we had to change the world for our kids. You know, we didn't like the way the world was going. We were watching it firsthand. I'm going to talk to you about the shared housing formula in 4 Homes to Freedom. Let's see if I can. Is this mic'd? This is a video. Can I turn this up? Where would I put the mic by to get the video? Okay.
Put your mic by the sound.
See if we can do this. Yeah, it's not going to work. I'm going to talk you guys through this. So we've got some videos, and I'm going to talk you through this. This is my husband, Frank, and this is the 2 of us, and we are doing a bus tour in Seattle, Washington, of some of the homes that we purchased. And the way we purchase homes is we buy them and we have the government and vouchers pay us by the bed. And so we were able to establish a huge real estate portfolio in Seattle and other parts of the country. And what was amazing about this is we don't even recognize our homes most of the time because we are taking in foster kids aging out of the system. We're taking in Vietnam vets. We're taking in people who have been affected by the justice system. We're taking disadvantaged women. And most of all, we're taking people who are looking for a solution for housing insecurity. And when we started this project, we had no idea what it was going to morph into. But what we found is we wanted to end housing insecurity for everybody in America, and the only way to do that was start teaching others how we do it, and letting other people know. We talk to real estate investors all the time because we are. And we're in it to buy real estate and have high cash flows and have our own financial insecurity. Here we go. But right now what we know is 70 million people, 25% of the population, is experiencing some sort of housing insecurity. It doesn't mean they're homeless. It means they're worried about their job, or they may have been part of the pandemic and their entire job. We saw the restaurant industry just poof. Construction industry in Seattle, it was shut down for months. And we said, what are we going to do about that? And we came to the conclusion that if we invest in people, we can change the world. And we started convincing government agencies that we were the solution with single family homes. In fact, I've got a student here in Painesville right now who we were able to turn her single family rental into shared housing for 7 people, you know. And we do have a formula, which I'm going to talk about. But tonight, you know, there's 3 things I want you to remember. I want you to participate. We're going to have questions at the end. I want you to have fun, because this really is a fun topic. Making money, buying real estate, saving people's lives, changing the outcome of a generation. That's fun. And take action. You know, we're going to show you how you can take action. So, you know, who's this for? You know, for all of us. We're real estate investors. I've had Midwest real estate holdings before. I had them in Indianapolis with Frank. We had them in Charlotte, North Carolina. But we wanted real and significant cash flow, because once we paid the property manager and the water heater went out, we didn't make that much money, you know. And you talked about those water bills. I was horrified, and then I realized I had those too. People that want to make a true impact, and we all do. We all want to do something. You want to do something with our lives. And the one thing I love about being a real estate investor, because I'm one of you, and is I love the fact that we can own property and make social change. And if you've ever had housing insecurity, and I think a lot of people have at some point in their life, worried about paying the mortgage payment. You know, I don't know about you, but I know in 2020, we were teaching in every single week. We were actually traveling all over the country teaching students in their hometowns, and the company we were teaching for went bankrupt. So it's like, oh, that's gonna end that one, you know. I mean, but it's really not for, and I didn't make the slide, you know, Anna, this came from Jean. You know, people are lazy because, you know what, real estate's hard work. You know, it's hard work to get out there and put yourself out there and get those deals. And if you want to get rich quick, actually we bought 4 houses in 1 year, so I'm going to table that one. People are not willing to invest in themselves because this is learning some new skills, and I'm going to kind of take you through some of that tonight. And if you don't really want to help others, you know, what we have found, because Frank and I have taught thousands of people for years, is that there is a whole group of people who have this deep yearning inside to make a difference in the lives of others. And in fact, right now we got a couple of students we're working with who are buying houses to do recovery homes for their kids, but they don't want their kids to know because they want the kids to pay the rent. They figure if mom knows, they're not going to do it. And, you know, what's going to change this year? You know, I thought when we were doing this in the first part of 2021, the pandemic was over. You know, we were all going to get back to normal life. And, you know, that's not happening. We're just going on anyway. But what we are finding is interest rates are going up. Interest rates are changing. You know, but we're the biggest debtor. How much can they go up? You know, you kind of wonder about that. If we got $27 trillion in debt and 1% is $270 billion. Remember how they used to have that clock over at New York where it would just kind of spin, spin, spin? I sometimes wonder, do they like run out of decimals? You know, I don't know. You know, but the reality is we can't afford to raise interest rates. So what happens when you can't raise interest rates? You got inflation. It's the highest it's been, this Wall Street Journal, in 13 years. And I know as us as investors, that bothers us because that means taxes are going up. And, you know, transitory inflation, that's that month-to-month stuff. It was only 1% in January. It's 5% right now. Yeah. And I just read it in last week's paper. So, I'm not trying to paint a bleak story, but I just kind of paint the way the world is right now, that we as investors should know these things, because real estate is financial. And the U.S., I'm going to show you how we're going to get around. We're going to beat the government. I mean, this is our goal tonight. The U.S. government is spending money they don't have. Well, they've been doing that forever. They're raising taxes on the wealthy to give to the needy. We saw that in today's paper. And they consider people with real estate wealthy too. Yeah. And this is the part that we all have experienced. They're protecting tenants and penalizing the property owners. And we know that. And we found a way around that. And we're going to share that with you. Okay, we're in JAWS, and what are we worried about? Paying bills. I mean, that happens. Inflation. And future opportunities for your children. I am a 60-something parent of a 3-year-old. I think about that. A lot of us do. A lot of us grandparents end up with our kids. It's just a reality. And, this is economists have told us, you're in the right place at the right time. What should you do? Invest in hard assets, real estate, income-producing assets. We're going to show you how to do 2x to 20-fold what you would normally get. And you kind of see, what is the government's policies asking us to do? Well, Frank and I cracked the code on this in 2015. What we found out is, there was prison reform, and we didn't even know anything about this, but 50% of people in prison are people who got there for a drug offense. And of that 50%, most are women who didn't do a darn thing. But when you're in the group, you go to, especially if you don't have money for a lawyer or you don't have a family. And when we started out, we started housing young moms who had been incarcerated and lost custody of their kids. But the government paid us. But we didn't know about that. So, I'm going to try and share some things that we've figured out along the way as real estate investors. That's good tidbits to have. Addiction, is the government paying for that? Yes. Yes. In fact, right now in Washington, they just passed legislation that I was telling Anna, you're my sister from another mother, because we spend a lot of time with the government, and we had legislation signed in Washington State first that only our types of accredited homes could be funded. And this year they're funding $75,000 for each new recovery home for a 2-year stint. Yeah, and they asked us, because we're accredited, they said, we'll give you $150,000 if you'll work with us to do a model for families. I know. It's in Washington state law. And one thing, when one state does it, many of them do, because we've worked all over the country. A lot, they may not have that big of a largesse, but they do have vouchers and funding. And we like to say, the thing is being with real estate is you want to skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been. And we know where it's going. Inflation's happening. The government's subsidizing housing. They're putting people out in prison reform. Just all these young moms that we used to house are putting them out and saying, hey, you're free, where do you go? And we found out, I know where they can go. They can go to our brand new homes that we're buying, and you're going to pay for it. So, we're going to talk about cash flowing properties, because we want the big returns, because we're fighting inflation. We're fighting government programs. And we talk about 3 times to 10-fold income from your single family rental. And this is the right time for shared housing. I'm going to tell you why, because I am a student of shared housing. We created this model that we've been doing, and we've taught lots and lots of people how to do it, and it works, and they're doing it. We house veterans. We took in a whole bunch of Vietnam vets in June. They didn't have anywhere to go. And, and when we talk about 4 homes to freedom, I'm going to show you the numbers on why buying 4 homes, and you can do it here in Ohio, because I'm talking to one of our students right now who live in Washington, D.C., and they're pulling up $40,000 properties that they're going to rent by the bed. So by the end of this presentation, you'll kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about and say, that's a pretty cool idea. And it may not be for you. But, I think if you're going to come and spend an hour with me, I want you to go home with some things to think about. And that idea of housing insecurity, we kind of say, is this a crisis or an opportunity? Well, we created the opportunity long before the crisis occurred last year. And this is our formula, basically, our 4 homes to freedom. And, people always ask about what is shared housing. This has been around forever. Boarding homes, it used to be there was either people who own boarding homes or people who rented them. And then we found along the way that there is a model called the Oxford House model. Does anybody know what an Oxford House is? Okay. So about 50 years ago, people with any type of alcoholism or addiction, after they had treatment, they would live together in community. It was called an Oxford House. And I have firsthand knowledge about this because my daughter went to one. And this is what made this Mama Bears say, we're going to turn this industry upside down. And so what they do is you have to be voted into the house. So I would sit out in the car while she was going in. She was 20 years old. I adopted her from Russia. Her parents were alcoholics. She got the genes. She had trauma. It happens. And she'd come down and she said they would call her if she was voted into the house. And sometimes she was voted in, but they had this thing where the other people ran the house. And they have a thing still today that in 15 minutes, if you do anything wrong or we don't like you anymore, you have to leave in 15 minutes. And this is gospel. This is still going on today. And this is why I'm in front of state governments to shut this down. And so we said, let's do something different. Let's create a model that is the opposite of this, that is kind to young Russian orphans or women or men who just happen to be struggling a little bit. And so what we came up with was a model where we don't take just anybody in. We just take people where some counselor says, I'm going to work with that person. I'll recommend them to your house. Oh, you get to pick who you want in your house, and we'll pay for it. And what we decided is we're going to invest in these people. You pay for it. We're just landlords. We're not program providers. We're landlords to a home. And, like so much of shared housing, so much of this is like the wild, wild west. Anybody could do it. It used to be some ex-felon would say, I got my grandma's house, stuff everybody in, and put them out. And we said, this is what people think of with shared housing, SWAT teams. This is what they think. This is the reality. This is our reality. We've been housing now for 6 years, 600 people, and we house really nice people. And, the biggest difference of all between Oxford and us, we get government money. And there's billions and billions of dollars of government money. In fact, the Biden administration is so entranced by this model of housing that Frank and I created and talk about all over the country. They're saying, they call them certified recovery homes. Those are the only people they're giving money to right now. And so, there's the myths versus the truth. Our truth is we go in good neighborhoods and we have affordable rent. Our residents appreciate us and they take care of the homes and they take care of each other. And it is an opportunity for a landlord, because I want you guys to suspend belief for a minute that it's going to be the SWAT team, it's going to be the ladies with the knitting club. And when we talk about shared housing, this is who we serve. We serve vets. And you know what? 15% of men in prison are vets because they have PTSD and they did something dumb. And these are actually some of the ladies we house for years. And they call it transition reentry, kindergarten teacher. And, when we teach a class, we explain to people that almost all the people we've had who came to us who are women were addicted to some sort of pills. These aren't meth and heroin addicts. These are people who got some prescription drugs. Student housing, it's been a big deal over the last year. Do your parents want their 19-year-olds at home? Dorms are closed. No, they're renting a house. They're sending them to a rental house. This is a huge opportunity. Go to any university, and the landlords who want to do student housing, stick a bunch of people in a house, they're making great rents. This is one of our homes, and that's a bunch of our women. That home we bought, we rehabbed it. We're rehabbers. That one actually had cockroaches in it. But it is fabulous. It's doubled in value. And because of our government vouchers, that home is getting $7,000 a month whether those beds are filled or not. Yeah, foster children. When you're 19 years old, you're off the dole, and 25% get put out. They have nowhere to go. Golden girls and boys, you know, they're not ready for a retirement home. They don't want to live alone. I'm betting they're drinking wine on the back porch. I know, but I don't care. They're not in my recovery home. But we have those. Special needs. This first generation of people who will outlive their parents. Never happened before the 80s. But now we have parents who have disabled adults buying shared homes, and we're showing them how to do that. Temporary workers. A whole bunch of our students who got in the recovery home business just got out of it. You know who they're housing? Traveling nurses. Yeah, $1,200 a bedroom. And that's all over the country. In fact, one of our students in Houston was just saying that they just dumped off 1,200 nurses in Houston. And I know, isn't it cool? They need a home. They're doing good work. And corporate housing, you know, really it's a shared journey of any kind. So I don't want us to think of the Oxford model, even though it's out there and there's thousands of them. We're thinking of the real estate investor model, and we're going to show you how to do that. You know, I often say, what's your legacy going to be? It's all about the kids. These are ours. And, you know, our little cuddle bugs that was recently taken. And, you know, it hurt me the other day when our 5-year-old told me he wanted to wear a mask all the time because he didn't want to get the virus. You know, we're in Florida. Florida, anything goes. But the kids are picking up on stress at the age of 5. I want a better world for these kids. And, you know, one of the things we often say, too, you know, there's reputable investors and people who take care of their homes. Your investments define you and how you care for your home. And, of course, right now, this is your real estate investor group. Show me the money. You cannot run a business unless you're making money. You can't. You know, I'm not here to tell you that we're doing just good work. We are. But we're owning the real estate. And when, you know, we're showing you the money. And I'll show you right now. So a typical single-family rental. You know, in a typical single-family home, this is higher than you're going to get out here. I know that because we have students in Ohio. But this is an average across America. On the coast, it'd be like $4,000. But if you've got a $1,700 rent and $1,500 in mortgage and taxes, and those, you know, you might get stuck with a water bill. You're going to get $200 a month. And we know this is to be true because we've owned real estate in other parts of the country. And in Seattle, you couldn't even get that $200 because the houses are so darn expensive. And the rent would be that level. But this is what we do. You can see we put 4-bedroom homes, typical single-family rentals. We put 2 people in a bedroom, and this wasn't our idea. The corrections officer who 6 years ago offered us $500 a month per bed said, put 10 people in this house, and I'll give you $500 a person. You guys are great people. I love this house. They need a place to go. So, of course, those vouchers are much higher now. But, you know, that was when Frank and I just looked at each other and they said, hey, we're in the hole on a private money loan. You know what those things cost? And we just rehab for 6 months and we owe Home Depot. If we're getting $4,000 for a $1,500 rent, this makes sense. So here, this typical would be, you know, we're paying utilities and we're coming home with $4,000 a month. And typically right now, our houses were on government contracts are making about $7,000 a month. And it's not just Seattle, it's all over the country where the high margins are happening. And so when you look at these guys together, you can say, do I want 200 or 4,000? And, you know, I have found it more difficult to rent to a single family who might be squatting in my home, and you're losing money because that's happened to us. And in shared housing, it's a program, so you don't have the eviction moratoriums. It doesn't apply. Says boldly, you know, I'm going back a little bit. I'm going the wrong direction. You know, I am a W-2. I mean, this is all I believed in. I went to college half my adult life, and I really mean that. And I worked for other people. I started biotech companies as a scientist. That's why I was in Seattle. It wasn't politics, it was work. And I got a doctorate in medicine. And this is why this plays into our shared housing, because my doctorate is in pharmacology, and I did work on opioids. Opioids are what is in Percocet and morphine and heroin. And what I learned when I was doing this work, because I was figuring out ways to stop them in their tracks, how to stop them from acting in the brain, how to stop them from killing people. And I told Frank when we opened up our first home, I said, you know, the biggest issue with Kate when she went to an Oxford home, no matter what medication she was on, they made her go off the meds because they didn't trust anybody in the home with their own drugs. It'd be like if you had cancer and they say you can't be on your cancer drugs. So we said with our first home, we are going to allow people to be in their medication. And I can tell you right now, we had cops with guns who were the corrections officers telling we were nuts. We said, no, we think this will work. I don't know why, I just got this dumb credential. And started a bunch of biotech companies. The reason I bring this up, most of these companies either went bankrupt or they made a ton of money. Guess what I took home? Zero. I was one of the founders. I took home nothing. When they go public, they take away all your shares and they dilute them out, and only the people who put in the funding got the money. So I found out the hard way in big business that I thought that was going to be my retirement. And it's like, no, you got to depend on yourself. You know, you guys are a lot smarter than me because a lot of you are younger than me and you've already figured that out. Frank, this is my darling husband. He's an international marketing, spent 34 years in a company until they booted him out. In fact, we got booted out of our companies about the same time, like within months of each other, you know. So we were like, what do we do now, you know? Like he became a real estate broker. I was talking to my friend over here saying, good thing to become a real estate broker so we get first dibs on the MLS and get the commission. He never sold anything for us, just our own homes. But we had to ask, how did we get here? We believe that myth of education. We believe that myth that if we worked hard enough, nobody would ever let us go. And the fact is, we were both broke at the same time. So you know what happens when you don't have any money and jobs and you're 50 years old? You go into real estate. You say, you know what, we're going to go buy some homes, we're going to watch some YouTube videos, we're going to rehab and flip homes. And that's what we did. And this was him. He never thought he was going to leave that job, but his business became obsolete. In fact, a lot of his business was here in Ohio. He used to visit mink farmers. Do you want to be in the mink industry with PETA today? They won't allow it. That was what he did. He was in animal husbandry. It's a thing in the West Coast. It's completely, company he worked for has been around for 110 years. They all went bankrupt at the same time. So what we did, what do you do when your life is falling apart? We went to Las Vegas. We said, we're going there. We're going there, buddy. We're going to go to Las Vegas and we're going to figure this thing out. You know, there's no way, you know, I don't want to be a scientist anymore. He's like, I can't be in the mink industry. Well, he took me to the gold and silver pawn shop, and we'd only been married a year when we started this business. And I'm like, I'm putting my hand in my pocket. You're going to take that ring? I just see this happening. And you can see we're kind of standing out, and that look on his face of consternation, because I'm really excited. I'm going, hey, baby, we can start something new. We can do something we always dreamed about. And he's like, yeah, I just know about mink, you know, we got a problem here. You know, it was, where do you go now? And people get to crossroads in life. And whether you pick it or not, you get stuck there, you know, and you got to have a plan B. And I was going through a plan B because, I mentioned my daughter Kate. I had met her when she was 6 years old. She was an orphan from Russia. I don't know if you remember in 2000, that Y2K, they were always had on the news, the orphans of Russia. They're starving. They're in orphanages. Bring them to the U.S. and feed them. We did it. I was actually finishing up that degree at the University of Washington, and my older kids, who were 12 and 16, put my name in the hat to get a child for a month. And I came home from work and I said, what do you mean we're taking a kid for a month? They said, oh, we promised the neighbor because she's bringing him all over here. She worked for an adoption agency. And I said, well, what do we do at the end of a month? And they said, well, you just send them back. And I said, well, it's like sending a puppy back to the pound after you've homed them for a month. That's not going to happen. That's what happened. I did adopt her. And she had a wonderful life and did very, very well. And she would go to Oxford homes and they would put her out on the curb, and she was so ashamed. She would move under a bridge because she couldn't stand to disappoint me. And that's when I found not only under that bridge was my daughter, there were kids who'd been battered and abused, there were foster kids, there were veterans, there were young adults, there were people escaping. They were telling me home is worse. This bridge is in Seattle. You know, we would go in the rain and look for her, and we took her to treatment probably a dozen times. And what we found out, I'm thinking, Frank and I are newly married. This is Kate. She's on heroin at this point, and the guy she's with is actually my son's best friend. When he found out that I was going to a heroin den to pluck out my daughter, he decided he should go with me. You know, this was not a good thing to do. But I don't know about you parents. I think you would do the same thing. You wouldn't think twice. You don't think about fear. I never thought about fear when I went under those bridges. I used to go at night. You know, I would be sit there and yell. I'd go, hey, it's Kate here. I'm her mom. And there'd be 80 kids. And you know what? They were always nice to me. And then Frank and I would go buy food for all of them. You know, so this is what affected me. We're now unemployed. I've had this hoity-toity job for my whole career, so did Frank. And we've seen those bridges. And we didn't know those people existed, and my kid was one of them. This is what happens when you do quality shared housing. She's been in and out of housing now for 10 years. And in the 10th year, again, she'd become homeless in between. I found a home that would keep her. It was in California. They always do things really blue state. And then it was a home that was very expensive, and they said, no, we're not going to put her on the curb. It's the only place that ever did that. She became clean. She became together. She had a child. She's married. She's stable today. She went from a bridge to stability. And Frank, you know, when you have those kind of big life events, when, you know, it's like when somebody in your family dies, you know, or something big happens and it hits you and you say, I got to do something about this. We decided all those homes that Kate had been to and all those kids who had those bad homes, we were going to end housing insecurity for every last one of them. And we had a vision. We had a vision. And the vision was, we can do it better. This is Frank. He really does paint in a suit. He will deny it if he's here. But we were having tours. And what happened is when we did this home, the government came. Senator Patty Murray's office came, the local Congress people came, the courts came, the prisons came, people from New York City came, because we were putting 8 people in a home who many had been meth and heroin addicts, foster kids, and they were doing really well. And we kept saying, but we just bought this because we wanted to be real estate investors. You know, so we bought a home with all the right parameters in a great appreciating neighborhood, and that was the key. Our homes were in great neighborhoods. And yes, the neighbors looked at us a little askance at times. You know, for 50 years, this has been the model. It's still on today. I could drive through any part of any town and find those homes. And this is our mission. So what we do is, in 2017, we've been haranguing government officials ever since to shut down those substandard homes. But we said, we're going to teach people. We're going to teach people how to do what we do. We're going to talk to people because people never thought about this before. In fact, we were just a month ago on a radio show podcast called The Real Estate Guys, TREG. They've been around since 1997. And when they were interviewing us, they said, you guys, you're the first time we've ever had anybody do this and do well and get lots and lots of real estate and change the world. In fact, this Friday, Saturday, they've asked us to come to their big syndication conference, syndication where they raise money, and we're going to go on stage, and we're their guests of honor. And I know, isn't that crazy? And we're looking at each other. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to wear. You know, it's like I actually was going to wear a dress tonight, but I pulled it out of the suitcase and realized I hadn't washed it well enough. There were spots on it. So this is my travel clothes. But we said the only way we can end housing insecurity is by teaching other people how to do this. Because what we find is when we speak to people, about 70% of people we talk to have somebody they know or care about who struggled with substance use disorder, who struggled with mental health issues. Sometimes it's 80%. The government tells us we're right. We don't ask people to raise their hands anymore because it's always most of the room. And we don't want to ever put anybody on the spot, but we know we're right, but we have a solution. These people were raising their hand because they wanted to join our mission. This was one of our classes. You know, back in the day, we have taught this class over and over and over again. We get better and better and better at it. And you can see there's a lot of younger people. They're going to change the world and own lots of real estate. So here's what you get. You get financial freedom, control your time. You leave your legacy. And, you know, we say if you follow what we do, you're going to save time and not make mistakes. But most of all, we're making an impact on the world because we know those 600 people we've housed to date. And we know the laws we've had changed in multiple states are impacting all their families, their grandmas, their kids. You know, and this is our formula. It's really impact investing, you know, and housing insecurity is real. I don't think any of us have housing security unless you own your own home, but even then you got to pay taxes on it. And again, that people you can serve, you know, what we find most of the time, if I were to say raise your hand, would you do veterans housing? Raise your hand. Yeah, most people would, you know, and I'm going to go back a little bit. Oh, never mind. This is one of our vets. I know this gentleman personally. He was 19 years old. He was the guard for President Clinton. It's a very young President Clinton. He gave me this photo. And he's there with our child. He's a personal friend. He's in his 40s. He's 100% disabled, not from the war injuries, from PTSD. And he actually set up a hotline for veterans contemplating suicide, and it's in every state in the nation. And it's just like we send our young people off and they come back with PTSD, the invisible wounds. And those are the people that we are housing. In fact, there's 4.7 million disabled vets right now looking for housing. And you know what? They like to live together. And they get vouchers. And they're happy. And they keep a really clean house. They really do. They scrub it. In fact, this is Charlie. We took in Charlie when he was 76. He's got family. You know, sometimes people look at us and say, well, where's their family? Charlie with PTSD, and he lets us share his story freely, spent 10 years in prison from 66 to 76. Now, who puts a 66-year-old in prison? He had PTSD so bad that the neighbors were torturing him with fireworks. And so he pulled out a gun. He didn't shoot anybody, he just showed it. That was worth 10 years. And we took him in, and the reason we had to take him in, his daughter's a police officer. She couldn't have him in her home because she has firearms. That was his sentence. So we housed Charlie for 8 months until we could find a family member. And that was the other thing, too. The family was afraid of Charlie. It was like, he's the sweetest guy in the world, but they didn't know that. And after 8 months of living with us on Christmas Day, family said, we're taking you in. Not his daughter, she can't, but his sister did. So sometimes the people you take in, they have stories. They're not scary stories. They're just life stories. Give you some statistics. This is a $42 billion industry in treatment for substance use disorder. Billions is the big number. It's growing. It's $52 billion in 2025, but we actually saw it went up 20% during the pandemic alone. And that's why the government is throwing tons and tons of money, not just for treatment, but for housing, for recovery housing. And, you know, they say 50% of U.S. adults have substance use disorder in their family. I think it's higher, but it's a lot. It's a lot of people. And again, Kate's a normal kid. She didn't choose her genetics or her trauma. You know, and this is one of the things for me as a medical scientist. This was last month. 32 million children, age 12 and older, use drugs. And they consider 12-year-olds adults. And so a lot of times when we're teaching, I do a unit I call Medical School 101 to kind of educate everybody, the parents and the grandparents, of what's going on today, what's really going on, because it helps us protect our kids. Because if we know, we can help them. And, you know, people in prison for drug offense, it's 50%. And again, who do we, I'm going to skip this video. That sweet lady was one of our golden girls. And she just didn't have anywhere to go. And then she lived with us for 5 years, and she just got her own apartment. And she was great. In the video, she talks about making dinner, making heavenly chicken. She's from the South, and family dinners. So really, there's significant government funding, and the reasons are, and this is happening today, National Alliance Recovery Residences. I sit on the state board in Washington. I'm actually a candidate right now to be on the governor's advisory board for medical professionals on treatment for substance use disorder. And what is sweeping the nation, it was put together in 2011 by a handful of people like Frank and me who just said we can do better for people who are struggling, and we have to get standards and ethics together. And so there are ethical people. I'm not saying we're all bad actors. And we created a code and a standard of care and ethics. And what we found is we were the ones who brought it to Washington State, but we found that code and that structure works for every population of people we serve. It was just kind of like a cookbook recipe. And we simplified it and said, with this recipe, we can put 8 people together, 9 people together. And this actually needs to be updated. Every one of those green states, including yours, requires NAR standards for recovery homes. In fact, Ohio is one of the biggest NAR states there are. And because this is a NAR state, I had a student in, is it Painesville? Yeah, Painesville. Talked to her, she had come to class, she was getting $1,000 a month in rent. We figured out the zoning and the placement and the structure of the house was ideal for shared housing. And because we're teaching her how to use accreditation standards, she had a very nice community corrections officer, a very nice, sweet woman named Bree, say, I will fund your house. I will put by the bed in here. I have funding for that. So we know this. And in fact, it's just been amazing for us as we've taught all over the country how it is sweeping the nation that this idea of quality shared housing is accepted by the people with the checkbooks. I know. So this is actually more than 34 states. It keeps going up by the month. But the Surgeon General was the first one. So 2011, usually when you start something new, nothing happens for a few years. But 5 years into it, the Surgeon General said, hey, those NAR standards, those recovery homes are working. So he referenced it in his report. And in 2017, the president threw a bunch of money at it. And now they're included in congressional legislation. In fact, even this past summer, the CARA, C-A-R-A Act, which Amy Klobuchar is co-sponsoring, has funding for recovery homes. So we've come from Frank and I like beating a wall saying, this is crazy, you can't treat people this way, to the federal government is saying, oh, we agree with you. Yeah, it's cool. So I'm gonna give you a couple more factoids to take home tonight. Medically assisted treatment homes, and that's what we started with, and we brought it to Washington State, is if you're on medication, you get to take it. Isn't that a novel idea? Instead of what happened to Kate, where she'd be stable on something and they'd take it away. And the state laws, you're probably saying, well, not in my state. Well, the state laws are saying, NAR, you're the national standard. We're going to defer to you. So there's basically one standard that's sweeping the nation. And NAR defines MAT, and it's not required in many states just to get the big bucks. And when I'm talking about big bucks, we have a contract with drug court to keep people out of prison. We're just landlords. We're not doing anything for $500,000 a year just to hold 32 beds out for them in case they use them. And on any given month, they use 20 of them. Yeah. So, this is like, once we were at the beginning of this when there wasn't that much funding and there wasn't that much acceptance to, we're at the other end of it right now saying this is the best thing a landlord could do. And in fact, this is us over in the corner. And we called together, you can see there's some other operators and there are a whole bunch of people we knew had recovery homes and said, hey, let's look at that in our standard and bring it to Washington State. And we had a meeting and we explained it. And at that meeting, one of the guys said, well, your homes, because we have Kate's House Foundation, where we had bought 4 homes that were generating massive money within a year. That's why we know about 4 Homes to Freedom are the only ones that would meet our standards. And so we formed the state affiliate, and we were the first accredited homes. And if you think I stopped at Washington, we've been in Florida for 3 months. I was on the phone with Marco Rubio's office last week. And they asked me, they said, you know, we know Florida's in our state. If you could ask the federal government to do anything for you, what would you do? I said, anything? Literally. This is the Yates. And I said, okay. I said, I want to change things at the federal level. And they said, what do you want? I said, well, the reason we can go into neighborhoods is we become experts on fair housing. And we use fair housing standards to allow us to put a lot of people in a home and put them in nice neighborhoods, appreciating neighborhoods. I said, but right now, fair housing only goes up to 5 unrelated people on average. You know, a lot of areas, like my cities, will go up to 8. I said, I want to change fair housing standards. They said, what do you want? I said, I don't know, 7, 8, can we do that? And they said, they got a guy named Clive, and Clive's going to call me. So, you know, listening to Anna tonight, you guys are so lucky. You really are, to have somebody who's just sitting there changing the way the world looks at rental housing so that we win. That's what we're doing. We're changing the way fair housing works so we all win. Oh, that's Governor Inslee. He lasted 1 month in the presidential race because he only had a platform on one thing. And Frank and I were watching. We said, you know, Jay, you got to talk about more than one thing. He failed, but he's really good on recovery homes. That's me in the red coat. He was signing legislation that in 3 years, only accredited housing would get state funding. And our state funds millions and millions of dollars for people. And that was in 2019. This past year is when he passed that law saying, I think we'll just throw $75,000 for 20 new homes and $150,000 for family homes. And then we got a call that said, you guys are the only ones who could do the family home. Can you make one? Seriously. So here's our formula. We own and operate 6 homes. We could own a whole lot more if we weren't banging down doors of legislators and teaching this all over the country and speaking about it. But we're fine. We've earned millions of dollars of government contracts. Our homes are worth billions of dollars. Seattle, Washington, average price is $700,000. Today we bought them for half. I got to correct this. We've served over 600 people. And we invest in people to change the world, but we've changed our world too. We not only have a legacy, we have financial freedom. And we have a registered trademark. You know, the way we do our house is so unique, the patent office agreed with us. And there's 10 steps. And there's 3 smartest ways to participate. And I told you I would tell you that. You can own it. You can own a house and do it. And we know you can do it in Ohio because we got a couple students doing it right now. This is something else a lot of our people are doing. They don't have money for housing. They can't buy a house. They're renting them. And with 70% of landlords wanting to have a good rental, we've even rented one. We said, okay, we'll give you $300 more a month than you're asking if we can use it for shared housing. And the landlord said she thought it was a little weird idea, but she got enticed by the extra money. And we've been renting that house for 3 years, and now it's a lease to own. Or you can be the lender to somebody else who wants to do it. Get your kids set up in business. Get your kids set up in student housing, veterans housing. Let's see what we got here. You know, I always ask people, how much money do you need to make each month to live? I mean, Frank and I I'm going to tell you, when we both lost our jobs, we were looking at 2 6-figure salaries that just poofed out the toilet, and we didn't have that much in our 401ks. I think when we went to Las Vegas, I was really thinking I could win something. But you think about house, cars, kids, food, and fun. You know, if we could show you how to do $10,000 a month, I'm telling you, we're getting $7,000 per home. And that's net cash flow. I'll show you how we do it. How many homes do you need? If it was at 200, it would be 50. And we did that. We actually bought 3 homes in Indianapolis one time, thinking that was going to be our retirement, except they squatted, they tore it apart, they called the health department. You know, I mean, the stories aren't pretty, But, here with our 4 homes at 4,000, it's not really 10,000, it's 16,000. We're easily netting more than that. We're doing government contracts. These figures are real. Our students are doing it, and some of them are pivoting off of recovery homes, like I said, to do nurses. There's a huge need right now. And that was our first house. And, people always want to look at our numbers. They want to know that we were all in at 400,000 back in 2016. And that has made an average of $800 a month every month. And we're making $54,000. It's potential income, but it is what we're making each year. We're actually making more than $800 a month right now because the rate keeps going up. Because the government wants to put people somewhere. In the King County Drug Court, why did we do that? We wanted to keep all those young kids out of prison. I don't know if you know what drug court is, but they live with us for 2 years, and we don't take care of them. The court does. And they manage everything, and the court pays us. And that's our second one. You can see the Cadillac in the driveway. The resident has a nicer car than me. And we were in at 440, and I know these numbers are higher than Ohio because we have students here who are buying homes for $40,000, but they're still renting out at $500 per bed. So you got a better cash flow advantage here. And those are drug court numbers, but that's also numbers for a higher level home. So this one's making about $60,000 a year. So we have 6 of those in Seattle, and they're going up in value. And so we say the mortgage is being paid down, it's appreciating, we're helping people. And like we like to say, it's like a monopoly game, but the difference is when you land on our piece, you have to pay triple rent. And these are more of our homes. We've got a complex. I've got 16 men in those 2 homes. And some of them are older gentlemen. Some of them are younger guys who were very low risk, who we took in on house arrest or on an ankle bracelet. And they go off to work every day. And we're not paying for them either. All of them are coming with funding. And you better get that. If it's Frank, tell him I'm almost done. He's always planting somebody. We discovered a secret on this one, and we control this house with no money down. And this one had a beautiful view. We're rehabbing it right now. I'm just going to tell you the story of this young woman. This was one of our first residents, and she's with her child. She came to us after spending 4.5 years in prison. She was one of these young adults, single mom, who had everything going for her, still does. She was managing a real estate office. She had been a paralegal. She's personality plus, single mom of her little one would have been 4 at the time. And she's driving home from the preschool. And she had been having stress. And so she went to her very trusted doctor, and he put her on Ambien, the sleeping pill. It's very addictive. And she didn't know that. She didn't know she was addicted. And she didn't know part of the addiction meant you'd fall asleep while you're driving. And she did with her son in the car. She woke up the next day in jail. Her son is gone. Luckily, her parents were able to parent her child. And she spent 4.5 years in prison for that. And I would argue, as a medical professional, she didn't choose to be addicted. She didn't give herself that drug. And she trusted her doctor, but still somebody died. And this happens every single day. And those are our clients. And she lived with us. And, there is a great end of the story. This is the day she got off of her probation. She was in probation for 2 years. So 6.5 years of a young person's life, poof, and a record forever, and the guilt that she carries. And she went to Universal Studios, and this picture of her and her son, we were the first ones to get that picture. And there was one with her and her mom. And we're good friends today. Every time I put something on Instagram or Facebook, or she's the first one to like it, and she's doing great. She's running a restaurant right now. But, when you think of the stories of people, I was like everybody else. I didn't know these stories existed because I was too busy working in a biotech company, dealing with Kate's addiction. I didn't realize that, everybody's got a story, and a lot of these young people or these older people like Charlie, he wanted to go home. He's 76, he's frail, but he can't. There's a whole lot of people out there deserving of housing And shared housing provides it because, you know what, when you put a lot of people in the house together, they're accountable to each other, and they do great things, and they manage to really live in harmony. And we know because we've been doing it for a long time. And that's her story. That's not going to play, but that's okay. What we always say, when you invest in people, you change the world. And so we always ask people if they want to join us on our mission. And Anna was talking about Shared Housing Academy. I'll tell you how that came about. We had decided, we were giving a speech on the Queen Mary in 2017. And at the end of the speech, there were about 400 people. It was a big real estate group. And we were the featured speakers, and we had a video of our women, and we were just housing women. And for some reason, the guy who introduced us said, wouldn't you love to take a class from these people, learn how to do it? And like 75 people rushed the stage, and we're sitting there, and he looked at me. I said, we don't have a class. We don't have, what are you talking about? We don't have a class. He said, you better write one. So for the next 6 months, we did. And we started teaching it, and it went, we would always be in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Orlando, Washington, D.C., 3-day seminars. And the thing is, what was different about our class is people would actually learn enough to go out and do what we told them to do. And, they were transforming their communities. And then we went online, and we were busy all the time online. And then the pandemic hit, and the people that were sponsoring us went bankrupt. So we kind of said, well, we don't know what we're going to do. And well, Frank and I aren't idle people, so we wrote another class, and we made it better. And we talk about fair housing laws and medical aspects, and really what governs these homes are these house rules of everything we've learned over 6 years. And people always ask us, how would I do this? Well, you have questions, I'm sure. What about zoning? We figured that one out. The neighbors, liability. We know about that too. We actually teach about 501c3s and how to get that liability taken care of. Funding, where do you get it? And do you need a license? Most states no. In fact, only a couple of states require a license. And I always ask if I can have your permission to look at 3 different doors. You have 3 choices. I don't like to say close your eyes and pretend it will go away. It's not going to go away. But you can have this knowledge, because I know every time we talk to people, they go, I never knew about any of this because I didn't either till we did it. And it's, it kind of gnaws at you, and you might have a home you already have, and you're kind of wondering, maybe I'll try that. That was a cool talk. I learned a lot. You can try to do it yourself and hope you figure it out. It is complicated, but we have figured out how to get around the complications because we've been doing it a long time. Or you can join us in a class and save time and avoid mistakes. And so we're doing a virtual, and we've taught it many times. It's actually pretty cool. We do a Zoom, and you don't have to come by yourself if you have a business partner. And what we define a business partner is somebody you may have done a deal with, or your family, or somebody you share a bank account with, or anybody. You could have 20 people in the room, just have a watch party, but we do a Zoom 3-day. And we have a lot of cool people join. And this is what we cover. How to find the best opportunities, because not every house is ideal, but you know what? We've repurposed a lot of people's homes. And sometimes we have people selling homes to buy new homes in better areas because they're better investments. Because at the end of the day, this is about a good real estate investment. I did it again. Gotta forgive me here. How to get investors. We're not, you probably have gathered by now with 2 little kids and living across the country. We're not hands-on managers. That you can't be. I don't want to be, but we do have some people who are. We've got a woman who took our class, and she owns literally millions of dollars of real estate that's cash flowing. But she took the class, and she told me afterwards, because we do a segment on what kind of medications people take so that they can be safe and secure in your home. She said if her daughter had been in my home, in Arcade's home, she wouldn't have overdosed and died in the recovery home she had died in 11 years ago. So Becky's going to do a hands-on home, and she's doing that in Colorado. But so we do find people who have an interest in being involved with the vets. My husband Frank loves to visit the men when we're in Seattle. And the government contracts, how did we get a $500,000 contract from a drug court? And guess what? There's a drug court in every city in the country. And a lot of them have funding. Some of them don't. But, I was as shocked as anybody when our student Jen in Paynesville brought somebody over from Department of Corrections, and I explained who we were and what we did. That was Jen's rules, or our house rules Jen was using, and which she loved. And I said, do you have funding for her? And she goes, yeah, I got funding. And I said, but I only want wonderful people in Jen's home. I want the best. I want people who, if they were incarcerated, they took a bunch of classes, came out with a degree, and are working. We want the cream of the crop. She goes, we do that. And that we did find is when you get what you ask for. And we've had those conversations with a lot of people. We house men who've come out of the Salvation Army's one-year program. And you know what they do when they come to our house? They build things and do the lawn. And how to do it with your own capital. And we say fast track to your first home in 3 to 6 months today. It is 3 to 6 months if you have real estate. If you need to buy real estate, I would say 6 months to a year is more reasonable. And where do you put it? There's like 26 parameters we talk about that you need to pick out as to where to put your home. And my favorite is hands-off management playbook and funding. We've got lists of funders who love this, by the way, and licensing and zoning and HOAs. Can you do it in an HOA? Some of our students in Texas are actually. And how do we fill our homes? How do we get all those great people? We figure that too. We've made the connections. And a 501c3, we have a nonprofit, but the homes are not in the nonprofit. People always ask us that because we want to be able to finance the homes and take money out of it. And we got a bunch of home tours, so you can look at what other people did. In fact, I have Jen in Ohio's home tour that we show. And so basically, we talk about financial freedom, control your time, leave your legacy, and make an impact in the world. And with all of this, and we've kind of put a price on what it would be worth to know how to build a franchise, basically. The price would be almost $10,000, literally, for the amount of information. But obviously you're here, and we're not going to do that. And so if all you get from tonight is a new way to run your homes, I'm happy, because we're sending you a message. But what I'd love to see you guys do is think about doing it the shared housing way, get your financial independence, and do it with our set of rules, so people are treated with dignity and respect. And so we discount this all the way down to 1997. And again, you can split that with a partner. We're not like, oh my gosh. And basically, class is coming up in October 14th through 16th, and another one December 3rd through 5th. And the classes do fill up. The last class we did in July, it was big. There were like 130 people throughout the country, and that was a little too big. We normally run about 60 because we want to have interaction and be able to talk to people. We have happy hours, which they're telling me they're changing it to social hours, because since we do recovery homes, we can't have happy hours. And I said, well, can't we just be happy? I don't know. So all of this for 1997. And, this is how strongly we feel about this. If you sign up tonight, you go home in a couple days and you say, I don't want to do that. We've got a 7-day money-back guarantee, and I don't think you've ever heard anybody do that, because we just want people who are interested in utilizing their real estate effectively for themselves and making a difference and coming to class with that kind of heart. And so, we always say take action now, and we do have a bonus, which I didn't even talk to you about. So there is a set of CDs, because if you want to get investment, you know how to do the perfect pitch, the perfect elevator speech. And I know these guys personally. Jean Guarino has been here to speak. Well, I work with Jean. So Jean plucked us out of that bankrupt company and said, if you guys want to do your thing, because I work with people 80 and over, and you guys work with people 79 and younger, he said, we can join forces and I'll take care of all your logistics, which has been great, because otherwise I wouldn't have met you guys. And Kevin Harrington, the Shark Tank guy, I pitched our recovery homes to Kevin because I was at Pitch Masters, and that was scary. That's the only time I ever had a dry mouth. And Matt Scott. Matt is actually one of the biggest capital raising guys in the United States, and he's actually doing all our trademarks and advertising right now for Frank and I because he loves what we do. I was on the phone with him this morning, or yesterday morning. Yeah, great guy. But anyways, they've raised about $500 million, and they've trained 300,000 people on how to ask for money. And they've got a $29.95 course, and I've done it. The course is great. I've done it in person, but I've done it online. 10 steps to a winning pitch. But if you sign up tonight, we'll give it to you for free. And if you say in 7 days, I don't want to do this, you get to keep this. And I know this is really crazy, but we believe in what we're doing. And we believe that your time investment is so worth it for yourselves, for what you can do. And a lot of people are going, that's a lot of money to invest in me. You are worth it. You are worth that investment because you have I've always said people who will go out on a weeknight till 9 o'clock at night rather than stay home and watch TV, which is what I'd prefer to do sometimes. That's a special breed of person who is into change. They're change makers. That's the reality. Look around the room and see who's here. You guys are change makers. So that's what we got. 4 Homes to Freedom. It'll change your life. We know it works in Ohio. 1997, you can partner in. And if the music was working, I would play. My husband is a composer and guitarist and singer, and he wrote the most beautiful song. And I can't play it, but if you go to our nonprofit foundation, it's kateshousefoundation.org. We have those videos, and Frank's music is KATESHOUSE Foundation, FOUNDATION.org. And it's an educational site. And we never take donations either. We're a nonprofit that makes so much money from real estate that we don't accept donations. So you can go to the website in peace and don't have to worry about it. So I want to thank you all for your time. If you would like to join our class, October 14th through 16th or December 3rd through 5th, Zoom online with your family, your friends, with the postman. I'm serious, he deserves a break too. Judy is doing sign-ups in the back of the room, and she's got her own form, and I'd love to have you come. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you. And I'll take questions. You got questions? Any questions?
Yes. And Judy will be in the back of the room there to answer your questions also.
I don't know if you might have touched on I don't know if you touched on this. And can you guys hear me? No.
Hello.
Mic's not on.
Here.
Oh. I don't, yes.
Batteries.
Hello.
Okay.
Ductwork.
Just needed a male voice there.
All right. I hope you guys can hear me now. You might have said this and I missed it, but are these houses considered rentals, and would you be subject to all the rental regulations in that city, or are they normal houses?
They are normal single-family homes. You saw the homes we buy? We buy them embedded in great neighborhoods. One of our homes next to a home daycare, and they're not subject to local law because with the house rules that we provide, that creates a program. And it's a program of recovery. So even if we're housing veterans who aren't in recovery, they're all under the same jurisdiction. And most states, and actually just in general, Supreme Court in Boston just passed that somebody in one of these homes said, "You can't evict me." He said, "Oh, yes, you can." And that was the Superior Court. Now, most states have written right in that if the home is structured correctly, no eviction moratoriums. And I didn't even mention that $500,000 contract was only worth $150,000 the day before the pandemic. So what happened is the judges came in and said, if you'll take more of our people, we will triple your contract. And that contract's still in effect today. So, I mean, really the push is to get anybody, because PTSD, veterans, vulnerable people, they're subject to funding, get them housed. I mean, really. So that's a great question. Yeah, no eviction moratoriums. Any other questions?
Just so you know, Toledo has 101 agencies that all want you to house their program people.
Yeah. Oh, this is one of the things we touch upon in class. How do you connect with the agency? And one of the things that Anna was saying was she's a housing provider. We have a whole script that we show people. I'm a housing provider, and how to connect with those agencies. We have lists of them. Now, we've been, helping people set up homes all over the country for years. And now that we're in Ohio and we're going, gosh, I have students buying homes for $40,000, getting $500 a bed. This is pretty darn cool. You got better numbers than we have in Washington. We get the appreciation, though. Any questions? You got one?
Yes, can you repeat your website or your email?
Oh, yeah. Our website is Kates, Kates, House, Foundation. It's named after my daughter, foundation.org. And you can't sign up for the class through the website. It's just got lots of information and videos. We're just doing signups tonight, and we'd love to have you. I came up from Tampa this morning, and you guys are lovely. It's just so nice to be back in the Midwest. We moved to the East Coast intentionally, to get away from the crazies out there. But it's just really nice to be with other like-minded people. Yeah.
Questions?
Hi. You house a lot of different groups, and I would like to know if within these groups, does there somebody live in one of the houses and are a group leader? Because there's a lot of rent going on here, and there'd be a lot of chaos with a lot of different people.
Now, we have no chaos because what we did is we created a set of basically a roadmap for living in the house. And before they come into the house, they have to agree to every single thing. And the last 10 comments are, if you don't agree, you'll choose to rehome. But yes, we do usually have somebody volunteer to be a house lead, and they manage everything. So no, if there was chaos, we wouldn't be in the business for 6 years, and we wouldn't have spoken to thousands of people about this type of housing. And our students are successful.
How does your model work when you were talking about special needs and autism? I mean, you can't put 8 autistic
No, you
adults in
can't,
a
but
house
you
with-
can get more money per head. I mean, basically, we have a dad who has a Down syndrome child, and he's putting together the home and putting in a house lead for that. And actually, we have a couple students with autistic kids. And in fact, one of my favorite men in the world has adopted 6 special needs adults, and he's in his 60s. And he's putting together a home because he's realizing, I'm in my 60s, my special needs kids have nowhere to go if something happens to me. And we're helping him set up that program. So what we did is we connected him up with an agency that could provide support and payments.
Do you have this in Spanish?
Oh, I don't. I wish we did. That's
Coming soon.
coming soon. You know what? I'm betting we could. One of the things we're doing is we're recording our classes, and we haven't made them available yet because I'm a perfectionist. But I bet as soon as we do, we could do an overdub. But you know what we do have in class? Remember, I said I was a student for a long time. The best PowerPoint slides you'll ever have in the universe. There's about 700 or 800. Because what we do is we send people home. You get them the day before class. In fact, I think day 1 we do 300. So you basically have all your information in writing that you get to keep. Yeah, I'm not a believer in just talking. You have to have something tangible to work from. And we cite the different legislation, and you can look at things. It's actually a pretty fun class, even if I do say so myself, because Frank likes to sing during class.
I have clients from Puerto Rico, and they have plenty of apps that will translate as you speak, too.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? One more over here in the blue.
So if you put about, let's say, 8 people in a house, the parking situation, is that when you buy the house, is that the criteria you look for? Is it like on-street parking / in-house parking, or?
You're spot on. We have about 26 different things we look for when we purchase a house. And we also have people who are non-drivers. Most people come to us don't have a car. But we do look for off-street parking. We look for corner lots, because we don't want to be that. We want to be the house you saw on screen, which has an American flag out in front, and all the neighbors love you because they can't see anything. And because we have multiple houses, here you could easily have 10 houses in a year.
Yeah.
If we get too many cars at one house, we say, you know what, Joe, I think you need to move over to the red house, because we call them all by the color of the house. But yeah, no, that's one of the criteria. I think that's a big part of the education for us is, we set people up with, these are the bullet points you need. In fact, at the end of class, we have handouts that say the 10 things you need to do to get started. This is your roadmap, how you do that. But those PowerPoints are really comprehensive. I know, because I work on them every time we have a class, I do more.
Okay, guys, think East Toledo. Nobody drives. They just catch a ride with somebody else. Got it? East Toledo. Here comes.
What's the question?
Do you have men and women that aren't related? Do you put them in the same house, or do you have a house for men?
We're kind of gender specific, but we have a friend who's doing a recovery house with men and women, and she put tape on the floor and told the guys, if you go over the tape, you're going to be removed, and they don't do it, and they actually get a lot. We've been in the house. It's in Arizona, and it's working very, very well. And typical rates on the West Coast are $700 to $800 a bed. In fact, one of our students just put 10 beds in a house in Arizona. And so, it works. It's just what we have found, because we've been doing this, if you tell people how they're going to live, they do, because they don't want to be unhoused.